So the time has finally come for me to review the XPS 17, and it feels like I'm reviewing the same laptop for the third time because, like I said before, the XPS lineup feels pretty similar across the 13, the 15 inch, but there are some minor differences. But with the XPS 15 in particular, this just seems like the bigger brother to that one. So I'm going to first talk about the specs. So starting off with the CPU, you can choose between a 4-core, 6-core, 8-core. Similar to the XPS 15, the only major difference in terms of the internal components is that you can choose the 2060 Max Q instead if you need a lot more graphical power out of your machine if you're using Windows. So another thing I want to touch on is the display, and on here it is 1080p. It looks fine for, I would say, a vast majority of people, but if you are a person who wants to utilize more productivity out of this machine, so I would say people who use a lot of Excel sheets, because using Excel on a more densely pixelated screen, that sounds really weird, but you're just able to see a lot more on your screen. That goes for coders as well. I know a lot of people say that you can't see the benefits of 4K at this distance, but I think that really only comes into play when you're talking about watching movies, TV shows, or like media consumption. But in terms of productivity, I do think there is a benefit for having a higher resolution display. So if you are a person who can take advantage of that, I would say that go ahead and buy that 4K panel. It also does come with touchscreen. And another thing I want to touch on as well is, like I said in my comparison video, the 4K panel on here costs $100 more than the 15 inch. If you are a person who doesn't need that 2060 Max Q, you might want to go with the 15 inch instead, because you are taking a $100 credit or discount, I would say, for going for that 4K panel. So next up, I want to talk about ports, and this one's going to be pretty easy. So there are 4 Thunderbolt 3 ports, 2 on each side, a full-size SD card slot, and a headphone jack. So those are the ports. So the storage and RAM are upgradable like in the 15 inch. It comes with the killer Wi-Fi 6 card. I'm going to talk about that later in the video. So moving on to the unlocking methods, it's similar. It's actually the exact same as the XPS 15 and 13. You can unlock it using your fingerprint, typing in password, or you can utilize facial recognition using Windows Hello at the top, which for me, in my experience, is always kind of finicky, but for others, it might work perfectly. I think your mileage just will vary. Moving on to the build quality, it is still using the aluminum finish that is on the XPS 15 and 17. Like I've said before many times, I really love this design. It's probably one of my favorite looking laptops of this year so far. You do have extra vents on the bottom just because, like I said, you have more powerful components in this machine than the 15 inch. Another thing I want to touch on is the carbon fiber on the inside. I use a Dell XPS 15, the 7590, I think, for my work laptop. And this one is much better. The carbon fiber does not get it just seems more resistant to all the residue that gets left on after usage. I don't find myself cleaning it as much. Another thing I want to touch on is the speaker grills on the side as well. They're much more pronounced than the 15 inch. The speaker grills are extended out a little bit further. You do have a little bit bigger trackpad than the 15 inch. Keyboard size is the same. But now I want to talk about the dislikes that I have with this product. And I think this is really just going to be like a generalization of XPS in general. First off, Windows Hello, you guys have heard me complain about this all the time, but for the XPS in particular, Windows Hello does not work very good for me. That's all I'm going to say about that. I don't have the trackpad issue on here, but the biggest thing for me is the Wi-Fi. And what is a laptop without internet? It is kind of useless. And whenever I take this computer out from sleep or hibernate, it does not want to connect to the internet. I don't have any issue with this when I was using the Surface Book or the Surface laptop. I don't have this issue with any other laptop that I have unless it's an XPS. And I just think it's that the killer Wi-Fi card. You guys might want to upgrade to using an Intel Wi-Fi 6 card if it's available, or just any other Wi-Fi card if it's available, because I always just have problems connected to the internet when I boot this up from hibernate mode or sleep. Yes, I can shut this computer off completely, but I'm a person who just likes to close their laptop and then open it back up later on. I don't like to go over down to the left, shut it off manually every single time. I don't think most people do that anyway, but the Wi-Fi thing is just really what bugs me the most about this computer. Yes, it only lasts about like a minute because I have to like turn off the Wi-Fi, turn it back on, then connect it to my internet, and then everything is fine. But I feel like that issue shouldn't be happening when you're purchasing a device this expensive. Another thing that I don't like, this is just for me personally, is that since this is extended out a little bit more and the keyboard is just this part right here, it's the same size as 13-inch, I just don't have a comfortable typing experience like I do on the 13-inch. If you guys know me, you know that I prefer 13 inches over pretty much any other size. But since the keyboard is shorter than the overall length of the chassis, like there's no numpad, it just feels like a weird typing experience. But that's just for me. I know some people are probably going to have no issues typing on this keyboard, but the keyboard itself I think is really good. I like it overall than the previous generation of the XPS. The trackpad is also good. It's very, I'm smiling because I really like this trackpad. I'm not a clicker, I'm a tapper like I said before in my XPS 15 review, and it's a nice clicking trackpad. That's all I can say. So that's pretty much all my dislikes that I have with this machine. It's really just Windows Hello and the Wi-Fi, and if you think about it, it's just me starting up the laptop, which makes me most frustrated. That's pretty much all the dislikes I have. Everything else I think is pretty exceptional in terms of what you get out of a Windows laptop. So now what I want to show you guys is the speaker test as well as the microphone and webcam. You guys can tell me how it looks. So this is the camera and microphone test on the XPS 17. I know it looks a little bit different, but trust me, I'm still wearing the same shirt. So the camera to me looks okay. It looks kind of blurry, even though it has Windows Hello. I would expect better. You guys can tell me how the microphone sounds, but this is pretty much the test that I'm doing on the XPS 17. See ya. So next up, I want to talk about the battery life, and primarily what I've been using this for is watching videos because the screen is so big, and I've gotten anywhere between like 4 to 5 hours watching videos non-stop before it turns into lower battery mode. But if you're doing like non-CPU intensive stuff, you're probably going to get through the entire day. But once you start utilizing that CPU more and more, you're going to notice your battery starts to drain a little bit faster. But I think that's pretty common with most laptops and devices in general. Now the question is, do you gotta have it? And I'm pretty much blitzing through this review because it really just feels like a bigger XPS 15. And like I said in my comparison video, if you don't need the 2060 Max Q or you don't need the bigger screen, I would say just go for the XPS 15, spec it up. You get a cheaper 4K display. You get the same CPU choices. You also get the same option to upgrade your RAM and storage yourself. I just think that the XPS 15 is just a much better buy. Kind of like my MacBook Pro 16-inch, I feel like a person would know if they need the XPS 17. I don't think people are just gonna go out of their way to get the XPS 17 just because now it's an option. I think Dell developed this for a special audience, and that audience is someone who's going to really use this as a desktop replacement. I would not recommend using this on your lap. It's, for me, just way too big. It's way too big. I say this all the time with any laptop over 13 inches, but it's just way too big for me. Another thing I want to mention is build quality. I think with the XPS 17, they really took their time on how they should develop this product because it feels a lot more solid than the XPS 15. And I think it was just because there's probably just a high demand for the XPS 15. But this one in particular, XPS 17, I had almost no issues at all using this. I think this is probably one of the best Dell machines I've ever owned. Dell laptop, I won't say machine. The XPS 13 is also really good, but just I had some software issues. The XPS 15, I had hardware issues. With the XPS 17, the only issue I have is the stupid Windows Hello and the killer Wi-Fi card, and that's it. Everything else is pretty exceptional. So pricing with this one starts pretty close to the XPS 15. I don't know if Dell is going to have a back to school session. They have sales pretty much, I feel like, all the time. They're always changing the options that they have. And I think that the XPS 17 might be a little bit too big for most people. Like I said, if you know you need this machine, you know it. Dell developed this product for you. So with all that being said, I hope you guys did enjoy the video. Please make sure to leave a like if you did. Subscribe if you want to see more content. And as always, Much love. Woo! XPS. I really love this logo design. I wish Dell would take away their logo and put the XPS on the front, because the XPS just looks so much cleaner. It looks so much cleaner.